At a family gathering, my sister casually said that her husband and kids would be moving in with me. They had no idea I've already shifted to a new apartment. I've always been the responsible one in the family. By 32, I had managed to buy a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, something I was immensely proud of. My sister Lisa, on the other hand, had always taken the easier path, which had gotten her a mountain of debt, a husband who jumped from job to job, and 2 kids they could barely afford to feed. That Wednesday started like any other. I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk when Megan from accounting stopped by. "Hey, Emma," she said. "I wanted to thank you for letting me see the room in your house. I know I ultimately went with another place, but I appreciated you showing me around." I felt my brow furrow. "Megan, what are you talking about? I never showed you my house. Last weekend? Your sister Lisa showed me and a few others the available rooms. She said you were renting out 3 bedrooms starting next month." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "My sister showed you my house?" "Yeah, she had keys and everything. She said you were too busy with work to handle the viewings yourself." Megan's expression changed as she noticed my reaction. "Wait, did you not know about this?" I forced a smile. There must have been some miscommunication. Let me sort it out with my sister. As soon as Megan left, I checked Facebook Marketplace. Sure enough, there it was, an ad posted by Lisa. 3 furnished rooms available in spacious house. Great neighborhood. All utilities included. $850 per month per room. Deposit required to secure. There were photos of my living room, kitchen, and guest bedrooms, photos I'd never taken. Lisa had been inside my house without my knowledge. I called her immediately, my hands shaking with anger. "Hey, sis," she answered cheerfully. "Lisa, why is there an ad online offering rooms for rent in my house?" I kept my voice low. "Oh, that," she said with a laugh. "I was going to tell you about that. It's a great opportunity, Emma. Do you know how much money you can make? You can't rent out rooms in my house without asking me. You weren't using all the space anyway. Why let it go to waste?" The casualness in her voice made my blood boil. "Besides, I've already collected deposits from 3 people." "You've taken money from people?" "Lisa, that's illegal. Don't be so dramatic. I was going to split the profits with you. 50-50. How did you even get into my house?" "I used the spare key you keep at Mom and Dad's," she said casually. "Look, this benefits both of us. You get extra income, and I get a small finder's fee." "A finder's fee? You mean you're taking money from desperate people for rooms that aren't even available?" "They're available," Lisa insisted. "You just don't know it yet." That's when it clicked. Lisa wasn't just trying to rent out rooms. She was planning to move in herself. "Take down the ad," I said firmly, "and return every cent you've collected." Lisa sighed dramatically. "You're being ridiculous." "Fine, I'll take down the ad, but I can't return the money. Dan, and I already used it to put a deposit on a storage unit for our stuff." "Lisa, I have to go. Mia's teacher is calling. We'll talk about this at the family dinner on Sunday, okay? Mom really wants everyone there." She hung up before I could respond. I logged into my home security app. Lisa had been in and out of my house at least 6 times in the past 2 weeks, sometimes with strangers in tow. That evening, I drove home earlier than usual. The place was empty, but I noticed small changes. A moved vase here, a slightly repositioned couch there. In the guest bedroom closet, I found a box labeled Lisa's winter clothes. She had already started moving in. I sat down on my couch, my mind racing. The family dinner on Sunday was clearly going to be Lisa's stage for announcing her plan. Knowing my parents, they would side with her, talking about how family helps family and how my big house was a blessing meant to be shared. But something in me had finally snapped. Years of Lisa taking advantage, of my parents enabling her behavior, of me always being expected to be the responsible one who fixed everyone else's messes. I was done. Instead of confronting Lisa directly, which would only lead to a dramatic scene where I'd be painted as the villain, I decided to take a different approach. If Lisa wanted to play games with my house, I'd play too, but I'd make sure I won. I picked up my phone and called a real estate agent friend of mine. "Hey, Marcus. It's Emma. Remember how you mentioned you had clients looking for a rental in my area? I think I'm ready to lease out my house after all. As I hung up, a plan began to form in my mind. The next morning, I called in sick to work and met with Marcus. Within hours, we had drafted a legitimate lease agreement for a young professional couple desperate to find a place in the area. They could move in within 2 weeks. What about you? Marcus asked. I've been thinking about downsizing anyway. It's time for a change. By the end of the day, I had signed a lease on a modern one-bedroom apartment in the city, closer to my office and far from Lisa's prying eyes. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. For once, I wasn't going to be the reliable doormat everyone walked over. This time, Lisa would be the one caught off guard. And I couldn't wait to see her face when she realized her plan had backfired spectacularly. Little did she know, her casual attempt to hijack my life was about to turn into her biggest regret. Sunday arrived faster than I expected. I spent the morning packing essentials in discreet suitcases that I'd already moved to my car before heading to my parents' house. My stomach churned with anticipation, but I'd practiced my poker face in the mirror. Today was Lisa's show, and I wasn't about to steal her spotlight, not yet. Mom and Dad's suburban ranch-style home buzzed with the typical Sunday energy. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents mingled in the backyard where Dad proudly manned his cherished grill. The scent of barbecue hung in the air as children darted between adults, their laughter cutting through conversations. Emma, Mom rushed over as I entered the backyard, kissing my cheek. I was worried you wouldn't make it. You've been so busy lately. Wouldn't miss it, I said, handing her the wine I'd brought. I glanced around. Is Lisa here yet? Mom's eyes brightened. Yes, they just arrived. She mentioned she has some exciting news to share with everyone. I bet she does, I murmured. Mom tilted her head. You know about it already? I forced a smile. Let's just say I've heard rumors. I made my rounds, greeting relatives and deflecting questions about work and my perpetually non-existent love life. Uncle Phil was mid-lecture about investment properties when I spotted Lisa and her husband Dan entering the backyard. Their kids, Mia and Tyler, immediately raced toward the swing set. Lisa caught my eye and flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded back, maintaining my composure. Dan looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight as if the ground beneath him might collapse. He knew. Of course he knew about Lisa's plans, but the guilt in his eyes told me he wasn't entirely on board. Everyone's here now, Mom announced. Let's eat. We gathered around the extended patio tables, passing platters of burgers, corn on the cob, and Mom's famous potato salad. I positioned myself at the opposite end from Lisa, watching as she whispered animatedly with our cousin Jen, occasionally glancing my way. Dad raised his glass. It's wonderful having the family together. These gatherings mean everything to your mother and me. Everyone clinked glasses, echoing the sentiment. Lisa seized the moment. Speaking of family, she said, her voice rising to command attention, Dan and I have some news we'd like to share. The table quieted. All eyes turned to my sister, who was practically glowing with self-satisfaction. So, we've decided to move into Emma's house, she announced, as casually as if discussing the weather. It just makes sense. It's big, and she's barely home. Plus, with both of us working now, the commute from our apartment is finishing us. I kept my expression neutral, even as I felt several relatives' eyes dart toward me. The kids will have their own rooms for once, Lisa continued, and Emma won't have to worry about her place sitting empty while she's traveling for work. It's perfect timing, really. Mom clapped her hands together. That's wonderful. I've always said that big house is too much for just Emma. Dad nodded approvingly. Smart financial decision. Property is meant to be utilized, not sit empty. Plus, Lisa added, raising her voice slightly to ensure I heard, I've been helping Emma screen potential roommates to rent the extra bedroom. We've already collected some deposits. The audacity nearly made me choke on my water. She was spinning her scam as if she'd been doing me a favor. That's so thoughtful, Aunt Patricia chimed in. Emma works so hard. She probably appreciates the help. Lisa beamed. We're family. We look out for each other. When's the move-in date? My cousin Mark asked. Next Saturday, Lisa said confidently. We've already started packing. The movers are booked. The conversation shifted to logistics, how they'd arrange furniture, which schools the kids would transfer to, how much they'd save on commuting. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay with this arrangement. Not even my parents. They all simply assumed I'd bend over backward to accommodate Lisa, as I always had. Emma, my grandmother finally said, her voice cutting through the chatter. You're awfully quiet. Are you excited to have your sister's family moving in? All eyes turned to me. This was my moment. I could expose Lisa's scheme right then and there, but that would play into her hands. She'd become the victim, and I'd be the cruel sister who embarrassed her in front of the family. Instead, I smiled. It'll certainly be an adjustment. Lisa's confident expression flickered briefly. Do you need help moving your things to make room? Mom asked. No, I said calmly. I've got it under control. The conversation drifted to other topics, but I noticed Lisa watching me suspiciously for the rest of the afternoon. She'd expected resistance, tears, anger, a scene. My calm acceptance had thrown her completely off balance. As the gathering wound down, Lisa cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping Mom with dishes. You're being weirdly cool about all this, she whispered. I shrugged. What's there to be upset about? You've clearly thought everything through. Her eyes narrowed. Seriously, Emma? No lecture about boundaries? No mentions of legal ownership. Would it make a difference? Before she could respond, Dan called for her. It was time for them to leave. As I hugged my niece and nephew goodbye, a twinge of guilt rippled through me. They were innocent in all this. But Lisa needed to learn that actions have consequences, and unfortunately, her children would witness that lesson too. See you Saturday, Lisa said as they left, her voice carrying a hint of triumph mixed with lingering suspicion. I waved goodbye, mentally counting down the days until my sister's carefully constructed house of cards would come crashing down around her. It's nice to see you girls getting along so well, Mom said, patting my shoulder. If only she knew what was coming. Saturday morning arrived with perfect cinematic timing, clear blue skies with just enough clouds for dramatic effect. I'd spent the week finalizing my own move, secretly transferring the last of my personal belongings to my new apartment. Now I sat in my car, parked strategically across the street with a perfect view of my former home. My new tenants, Brian and Alyssa Morgan, had moved in 3 days earlier. They were a pleasant couple in their 30s. He worked in software development, she was a pediatric nurse. They'd been living with Alyssa's parents while saving for a house, and were ecstatic to find a rental in such a nice neighborhood. I'd explained my sister's potential intrusion, and they were understanding, even agreeing to be part of my plan. At exactly 9:15 a.m., a large moving truck rumbled down the street, followed by Lisa's silver minivan. I sank lower in my seat, heart hammering against my ribs. The truck parked directly in front of the house, while Lisa pulled into the driveway as if she already owned the place. Lisa emerged first, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the moderate morning light. She was dressed in what I recognized as her impressive outfit, the one she wore to parent-teacher conferences to convince everyone she had her life together. Dan followed, his shoulders hunched in the familiar posture of a man resigned to his fate. The kids tumbled out next. Mia, 10, clutched her beloved stuffed rabbit, while 8-year-old Tyler immediately fixated on the basketball hoop in the driveway. My chest tightened. The kids didn't deserve this drama, but I reminded myself that Lisa had brought this upon her family, not me. 2 burly movers jumped from the truck, approaching the family for instructions. Lisa pointed authoritatively toward the garage, then marched up to the front door, fishing something from her purse. Even from my vantage point, I could see the glint of the key she'd copied without permission. Kids, come see your new rooms, Lisa called, her voice carrying across the quiet morning air. I held my breath as she inserted the key into the lock. It didn't turn. Lisa frowned, trying again with more force. Nothing. Her smile faltered as she jiggled the key, then checked the doorknob like it might be the problem. Dan stepped forward, taking the key to try himself. After a moment, he shook his head. Did you change the locks, Lisa? Lisa's indignant response wasn't audible from my position, but her animated gestures told the story. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, each press more forceful than the last. The movers exchanged awkward glances, shifting their weight from foot to foot. The front door finally opened, revealing Brian in jeans and a casual t-shirt, coffee mug in hand. Even from across the street, I could see Lisa's entire body stiffen in surprise. "Can I help you?" Brian asked, his voice carrying just enough to reach my ears. Lisa recovered quickly, plastering on her sweetest smile. "Hi, there must be some mistake. I'm Lisa, Emma's sister. This is our moving day." Brian's practiced confusion was perfect. He glanced behind him as if expecting someone else to explain. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong house. We just moved in this week." Lisa's laugh was brittle. No, this is definitely my sister's house. 1428 Maple Street. Right address, Brian confirmed, but this isn't your sister's house anymore. My wife and I are renting it. Lisa's smile vanished. She turned to Dan, who looked as confused as she was. The kids had stopped their excited bouncing and were now watching with uncertainty. "That's impossible," Lisa insisted, her voice rising. "Emma would have told me if she was renting out her house." Alyssa appeared behind Brian, offering a sympathetic smile. "Would you like to call your sister? There seems to be a misunderstanding." That was my cue. I stepped out of my car and walked calmly across the street, savoring each step toward Lisa's unraveling scheme. Her back was to me, but I saw Dan notice me first, his eyes widening in realization. "Emma." Mia spotted me and ran over, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Are we really going to live in your pretty house?" Lisa whirled around, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and finally, dawning anger. "What is going on? Who are these people?" I patted Mia's head gently. "Sweetie, why don't you and Tyler check out the playground down the street? I need to talk to your mom and dad." Once the kids were out of earshot, I turned to my sister. "Lisa, meet Brian and Alyssa Morgan. They've signed a 1-year lease for my house." "You rented out your house?" Lisa hissed, stepping closer. "Without telling me? What about our arrangement?" "What arrangement?" I asked innocently. "The one where you broke into my house, advertised my rooms without permission, and collected deposits from strangers? Or the one where you announced to our entire family that you were moving in without ever actually asking me? You weren't on it at the family dinner." Lisa's voice rose to a shrill pitch. "You didn't say anything, because I wanted to see how far you'd take this," I replied calmly. "Pretty far, apparently." The movers shifted uncomfortably. One cleared his throat. "Ma'am, should we start unloading or—" "No, Lisa," and I shouted simultaneously. Dan finally stepped forward, running a hand through his hair. "Lisa, let's just go. We can figure this out." "Figure what out?" Lisa snapped. "My sister just sabotaged us. We gave up our apartment. We have nowhere to go." Brian and Alyssa exchanged uncomfortable glances before retreating inside, closing the door to give us privacy. Lisa's eyes filled with angry tears. "How could you do this to me? To the kids? How could you try to steal my house?" I countered. "You had no right, Lisa. None." Dan placed a restraining hand on Lisa's arm as she moved toward me. "We'll figure something out," he repeated, his voice strained. "Let's just go to your parents for now." "They're 3 hours away," Lisa cried. "All our stuff is packed. The kids' school is here." "You should have thought of that before you decided my house was yours for the taking," I said quietly. As if on cue, a security car pulled into the driveway, responding to the call I'd arranged earlier. The guard stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Emma Bennett?" he asked, approaching our tense circle. "That's me," I confirmed. "These people were just leaving." Lisa's face crumpled in humiliation as the reality of her situation finally sank in. The carefully crafted plan she'd been so proud of had fallen apart completely, leaving her family literally standing on the curb. "I need to see some identification, please," the security officer said calmly, his badge glinting in the morning sun. Officer Ramirez, according to his nameplate, was in his late 40s with the steady demeanor of someone who'd seen every kind of neighborhood dispute imaginable. Identification? For what? Lisa demanded, her voice rising an octave higher. This is ridiculous. I'm not showing you anything. This is my sister's house. Officer Ramirez consulted his clipboard. Ma'am, I have a report here stating that the property at 1428 Maple Street is currently leased to Brian and Alyssa Morgan. Are you the Morgans? No, they're not. I interjected before Lisa could respond. Officer, I'm Emma Bennett, the homeowner. These are the people I called about. Lisa's jaw dropped. You called security on me? Your own sister? By now, a few neighbors had emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Patel from next door stood on her porch with arms crossed, while the Johnsons across the street didn't even pretend they weren't watching the spectacle unfold. Emma informed us about a potential situation during the lease signing, Brian explained from the doorway, Alyssa hovering anxiously behind him. She mentioned that her sister might try to enter the property without authorization. That's a lie. Lisa shrieked, her composure crumbling completely. She rummaged through her purse and pulled out several folded papers. Look, I have agreements right here. People have paid me deposits to live in this house. Officer Ramirez took the papers, examining them with a frown. Ma'am, these aren't legal rental agreements. They're not notarized, and they don't bear the property owner's signature. I was handling it for her, Lisa insisted, shooting me a venomous glare. Tell him, Emma. Tell him we had an arrangement. The moving truck driver stepped forward, clearing his throat. Excuse me, but we're on the clock here. Are we unloading or not? Dan, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. No, we're not unloading. He turned to Lisa, his face a mask of barely contained fury and embarrassment. Lisa, stop. Just stop. We need to leave. Now. I'm not going anywhere. Lisa planted her feet firmly on the driveway. This is our new home. Emma's just being spiteful because she's jealous that I have a family and she doesn't. A collective gasp rose from the gathering spectators. Even Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, he said, his voice hardening, I need to see some identification from you and your husband. While Dan immediately reached for his wallet, Lisa crossed her arms defiantly. I don't have to show you anything. Emma's just trying to humiliate me. You're doing that quite effectively on your own, I said quietly. The kids had wandered back, drawn by their mother's escalating voice. Tyler clung to Dan's leg while Mia approached me with confusion etched across her small face. Aunt Emma, aren't we going to live in your pretty house anymore? She asked, her voice wobbling. Before I could answer, Lisa stormed over and grabbed Mia's hand. No, sweetie. Aunt Emma decided to give her house to strangers instead of her own family. Officer Ramirez had finished examining Dan's license. Sir, I understand this is a difficult situation, but I need you to remove your vehicles and moving truck from this property. The current tenants have rights, and if you refuse to leave, this becomes a trespassing issue. Trespassing. Lisa's voice crescendoed with each syllable. I can't be trespassing at my own sister's house. It's not your house, Officer Ramirez replied flatly. And yes, you can. The homeowner has specifically added your name to a no-access list for this property. That revelation silenced Lisa momentarily. Her eyes, wide with shock, darted to me. A no-access list? You put me on a no-access list. I met her gaze steadily. After I discovered you'd been entering my home without permission and fraudulently collecting money from people? Yes, I did. The moving truck driver signaled to his partner. We're heading out. You can call the company to reschedule once you have a new delivery address. Wait, Lisa cried, but the movers were already climbing back into their truck, clearly eager to escape the family drama. Dan pulled out his phone. I'll call your parents, he muttered to Lisa. Maybe they can come get us. No. Lisa snatched the phone from his hand. We are not telling my parents about this. Emma is just having a tantrum. She'll change her mind. Officer Ramirez stepped between us. Ma'am, I need you to vacate this property now, or I will have to call for police backup. Police? The color drained from Lisa's face. You'd have me arrested? In front of my children? Only if you refuse to leave, Officer Ramirez replied. Mia began to cry, her small shoulders shaking. Mommy, why is everyone mad? Why can't we go inside? Tyler joined in, fat tears rolling down his cheeks. I want to see my new room. The children's distress finally seemed to penetrate Lisa's stubborn determination. Her shoulders slumped as she looked at their tear-streaked faces. Dan stepped forward, placing a hand on Lisa's arm. We need to go. Now. His voice was low but firm, the tension in his jaw revealing his barely contained anger. But where will we go? Lisa whispered, suddenly looking small and lost. That's not Emma's problem, Dan said through gritted teeth. You promised me she was on board with this plan. You said she was excited to have us. Our parents' car chose that moment to pull into the driveway, their arrival sending a fresh wave of anxiety through me. Mom and Dad emerged, their expressions shifting from cheerful to confused as they took in the scene. The security officer, the crying children, Lisa's tear-streaked face, and the moving truck backing out of the driveway. What on earth is going on here? Dad demanded. Yes, Emma, Mom added, her gaze accusing. Why didn't you tell us you'd rented out your house? Your sister has been planning this move for weeks. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the next round of family drama. I did tell you. No one listened. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. Folks, I need everyone not residing at this address to leave the property within the next 5 minutes, or I will be forced to call for backup. The security officer's ultimatum hung in the air, leaving Lisa with nowhere to hide from the consequences of her actions. 3 weeks after the moving day disaster, I sat in a cafe across from my best friend Natalie, recounting the latest developments in what she dubbed the Lisa saga. So, your parents are still giving you the cold shoulder? Natalie stirred her latte, eyebrows raised. I nodded. They think I should have been the bigger person and let Lisa's family stay with me until they found a new place. Never mind that she tried to steal my house and scammed innocent people out of their money. After that humiliating confrontation in the driveway, Lisa and Dan had been forced to move their belongings into an expensive short-term storage unit. They'd spent 2 uncomfortable weeks in my parents' guest room, a 3-hour commute from their jobs and the kids' school. My parents had sided with Lisa, of course, painting me as the villain who had cruelly left my sister homeless. What none of them knew yet was that Lisa's problems were just beginning. Have you heard from any of the people she scammed? Natalie asked. That's actually why I wanted to meet, I said, lowering my voice. Remember how Lisa claimed she'd only taken deposits from 3 people? Turns out it was 5. And they're not happy. The first email had arrived a week after moving day, a confused message from someone named James Kim, asking when he could move into the room he'd paid a $900 deposit for. Then came a string of similar messages. A nursing student named Brielle, a recently divorced father named Michael, a young couple named Taylor and Sam, and a graduate student named Priya. All of them had the same story. Lisa had shown them around my house, accepted their deposits, and given them move-in dates. Now they couldn't reach her, and the house they thought they'd rented was occupied by the Morgans. How much money are we talking about? Natalie asked. Almost $5,000, I replied. She charged different amounts to different people, basically whatever she thought they'd pay. And she promised them all the same rooms. Natalie whistled. That's not just unethical, that's actual fraud. Exactly. I've been connecting these people with each other, and they're planning to take legal action. One of them, Michael, is a paralegal. He's organizing everyone to file a joint complaint. My phone buzzed with a text from Dan, which was unusual. Since moving day, all communication had gone through my parents or Lisa directly. Oh my God, I murmured, reading the message. Dan just got served with papers. The scammed renters found their address. Lisa and Dan had finally secured a small 2-bedroom apartment last week, much smaller than their previous place and significantly more expensive. The kids were sharing a room for the first time, and Lisa had been complaining bitterly about the cramped quarters to anyone who would listen. What are they going to do? Natalie asked. I don't know, I admitted. Lisa doesn't have the money to pay them back. She and Dan were already struggling financially before all this.
My phone buzzed again.
This time it was a call from my mother. "I should take this," I said, stepping outside the cafe. "Emma," Mom's voice was strained. "Have you heard what's happening with your sister? I just got a text from Dan about legal papers." "It's worse than that," Mom said. "These people are saying Lisa committed fraud. They're threatening to press criminal charges if she doesn't return their money immediately. Your father, and I don't have that kind of cash lying around." I leaned against the brick wall of the cafe. "This is Lisa's mess, Mom. She created it by lying to these people and taking their money for something she had no right to offer. She's still your sister." Mom's voice rose. "Family helps family. Where was that sentiment when Lisa was planning to take over my house without asking?" I countered. "Or when she invaded my privacy, made copies of my keys, and showed strangers around my home without permission?" There was a long silence. Finally, Mom sighed. "Lisa told us you had approved the whole thing. She said you were excited to have them move in with you. And you believed her without ever asking me directly?" Another uncomfortable silence. "We thought. Lisa said you two had discussed it extensively." Well, we hadn't. I watched people stream past on the sidewalk, going about their normal lives. And now Lisa's facing the consequences of her actions. "These people are saying they'll go to the police," Mom said quietly. "Emma, your sister could go to jail." The gravity of the situation hit me. As angry as I was at Lisa, I hadn't intended for things to escalate this far. "Let me talk to the renters," I said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll see if they're willing to accept a payment plan instead of pressing charges." Later that evening, I received a tearful call from Lisa herself, the first direct contact we'd had since moving day. "Emma," she sobbed, "they're saying I could go to jail. For fraud. I could lose my kids. Please, you have to help me." I told Mom I'd talk to the renters, I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But Lisa, you did defraud these people. You took their money under false pretenses." "I was going to pay them back," she insisted. "Once we were settled in your house, I was going to find the money somehow." "That's not how it works, and you know it." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache forming. "Have you apologized to them at least?" "Why would I?" "Lisa," I cut her off, "if you want my help, you need to take responsibility. These people lost money and housing opportunities because of you. Some of them had to scramble to find places to live." There was a long pause before Lisa spoke again, her voice small. "We had to take out a loan just to afford the security deposit on this apartment. Dan's talking about a second job. The kids are miserable sharing a room." For the first time, I heard genuine distress in my sister's voice, not the manipulative tears she usually employed, but real fear. "I'll do what I can," I promised, "but you need to face reality. You created this situation, and it's going to take time to fix it." As I hung up, I realized that Lisa's casual announcement at that family gathering had spiraled into a financial and legal nightmare that would haunt her for years to come. The entitled decision to claim my house as her own hadn't just cost her a place to live, it might cost her everything. 6 months had passed since the moving day fiasco. Winter had given way to spring, and the cherry blossoms outside my apartment window were in full bloom. I sipped my morning coffee, enjoying the peaceful view before heading to work. My phone chimed with a message from Brian and Alyssa, sending photos of the garden they'd planted in my, now their, backyard. They were model tenants, paying rent on time and taking immaculate care of the property. I hadn't spoken to Lisa in nearly 2 months. Our last conversation had ended with her screaming accusations that I'd ruined her life deliberately. Since then, all updates had come through my parents or occasional texts from Dan. The situation with the defrauded renters had been partially resolved. After several mediation sessions that I'd helped arrange, Lisa had agreed to a payment plan to return their deposits with interest. The group had reluctantly dropped their threat of criminal charges, but the financial burden had pushed my sister's already strained finances to the breaking point. My phone rang, Mom's number. I hesitated before answering. "Emma, are you coming to Sunday dinner this week?" Her voice sounded tired. "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied. "Last time I was there, Lisa refused to be in the same room as me. Mom sighed. Things have changed. Lisa and Dan, they're moving. Moving? Where to? An apartment across town. It's not in a great area, but it's all they can afford now. I set my mug down. What happened to their current place? They couldn't keep up with the rent increases, plus the repayment plan. Dan's second job barely covered daycare costs for the kids. Mom paused. Emma, they're selling their furniture to cover the security deposit. They don't even have beds for the children. A familiar twinge of guilt surfaced, but I pushed it away. That's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility. No one's saying it is, Mom replied, surprising me. Your father and we've been thinking about what happened. We didn't listen when you tried to tell us about Lisa's behavior. We enabled her. This admission, the first acknowledgement from my parents that they'd contributed to the problem, left me momentarily speechless. Anyway, Mom continued, Sunday dinner is just us this time. No Lisa. I thought maybe we could talk. The following Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house to find them alone, the usual chaotic energy of family gatherings notably absent. Over pot roast, Dad finally broached the subject we'd all been avoiding. Your sister's actions were wrong, he said simply. We should have questioned her story instead of assuming you were being difficult. What changed your mind? I asked. Mom exchanged glances with Dad. Lisa tried the same thing with your cousin Rachel. Showed up at her house unannounced, claiming Rachel had offered to let them stay until they got back on their feet. Rachel called us immediately. She never learns, I murmured. She's desperate, Dad corrected. But that doesn't excuse her behavior. After dinner, I drove across town to the address Mom had given me for Lisa's new apartment. The building was indeed in a rundown area, sandwiched between a liquor store and a pawn shop. Graffiti marked the exterior walls, and several windows were covered with cardboard. I found their unit on the second floor. The door was propped open with a box, and through the gap, I could see Lisa directing movers where to place their few remaining pieces of furniture. The apartment was tiny, with peeling wallpaper and water stains on the ceiling. I knocked lightly. Lisa turned, her expression hardening when she saw me. Come to gloat? She asked. No, I replied. I came to see if the kids are okay. Lisa laughed bitterly. They're sleeping on air mattresses and sharing a closet-sized room, but sure, they're great. Dan appeared from the back room, his face lighting up when he saw me. Emma, it's good to see you. Unlike Lisa, Dan had apologized weeks ago, admitting he'd gone along with her plan despite knowing it was wrong. He'd been sending me updates about the kids and had even asked for advice on the repayment plan. I brought something for Mia and Tyler, I said, holding up the gift bags I'd brought. Just some books and games. And this, I handed Dan an envelope. Lisa snatched it before he could open it. We don't want your charity. It's not charity, I said calmly. It's information about a program that might help with your debt. And a gift card for groceries. For the kids. Lisa stared at the envelope, conflict evident on her face. The past months had taken their toll. She'd lost weight, and deep circles shadowed her eyes. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. Why would you help us? She finally asked. After everything? Because, unlike you, I don't think family means taking advantage of each other. It means helping when help is genuinely needed. Lisa's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not the manipulative displays I'd grown accustomed to. I messed up. I messed up so badly. Her voice broke. I thought I was being clever, but I ruined everything. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest to accountability I'd ever heard from my sister. As I left their apartment, I felt no satisfaction in Lisa's downfall. Her entitlement had cost her nearly everything. Her comfortable home, her social standing, even her relationship with much of our family. The kids had suffered for her poor choices, and that was something I had never wanted. But as I drove back to my peaceful apartment, I realized that perhaps this harsh lesson was necessary. Lisa had spent her entire life believing she could take whatever she wanted without consequences. Now she knew differently. Sometimes the most important lessons are the most painful ones. And sometimes karma works exactly as it should.